Imagine a time when buying a loaf of bread required you to drag a goat through the marketplace. Not a metaphor, an actual goat. You'd arrive sweaty, the goat screaming, the baker unimpressed, and negotiations would begin. This was the Golden Age of Barter, a system so elegant, so efficient, that entire civilizations eventually looked at it and said, there has to be a less ridiculous way to live. Because barter had one small problem. You had to want what the other person had, at the exact same time. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Regular people call it, why do I have 7 goats and no shoes? Then someone had a revolutionary thought. What if, instead of carrying goats, chickens, grain, salt, beads, shiny rocks, and occasionally a suspiciously large turtle shell, we just agreed on something small, something light, something that didn't scream when you tried to pay for bread. And that's when humanity did the most human thing possible. We invented money. First metal, then paper. And eventually, numbers that don't even physically exist, but still somehow control our lives. But the real twist in the story isn't that we invented paper money. It's that, at some point, millions of people collectively agreed that a decorated piece of tree with a serious-looking face on it was worth food, shelter, and sometimes an entire house. No goat required. Today, we're diving into the absurd, brilliant, and slightly suspicious story of how humanity went from trading livestock to trusting paper. Metal money was a massive upgrade for humanity. Before it, trade involved animals, crops, tools, favors, and emotional breakdowns. After it, people could finally exchange value without dragging livestock through the streets. Coins, as we know them, began appearing around the 7th century BCE, independently in places like Lydia, modern-day Turkey, China, and parts of India. The Lydians are often credited with producing the first standardized metal coins, made from electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. This was revolutionary. No goats, no screaming, no emotional attachment to poultry. But coins introduced a new problem. They were heavy. Very heavy. As trade expanded and economies grew, merchants didn't just carry money, they carried entire backpacks of metal. A successful trader didn't look wealthy. He looked exhausted, strong, and constantly worried about being robbed. And robbery was common. If you traveled with silver, you attracted thieves. If you traveled with gold, you attracted organized thieves. If you traveled with a lot of gold, historians would later describe your journey as tragically predictable. So humanity faced a classic problem. How do you move value without physically moving value? The solution did not come from Europe. It did not come from kings. It came from merchants who were tired of lifting things. In China, as early as the Tang Dynasty, 7th to 10th century CE, traders began depositing their heavy metal coins with trusted agents, warehouses, or wealthy families. In exchange, they received paper receipts. These papers were not money. They were promises. They basically said, we owe you this much metal. You can claim it later. The idea was boring, responsible, very unexciting, which is exactly why it worked. At first, these papers were only used by the original owner. But then something unexpected happened. Someone tried to pay with the paper itself, and the other person accepted it. That single decision changed economic history forever, because at that moment, value detached itself from metal. The paper had no intrinsic worth. It wasn't rare. It wasn't strong. You could tear it, burn it, lose it, but it represented a promise, and the promise was trusted. By the Song Dynasty, 960 to 1279 CE, the Chinese government decided to fully embrace this system. They issued official paper money, backed by the state, known as jiaozi. This made China the first civilization in history to use government-issued paper currency. This was not a small step. This was humanity saying, we agree that symbols matter more than objects. And that agreement worked, for a while. Paper money made trade faster. Markets expanded. Commerce flourished. But it also revealed something dangerous. If money is just paper, what happens if you make too much of it? The Chinese experienced some of the world's first recorded cases of inflation caused by overprinting. Governments learned the hard way that trust is easy to gain and very easy to destroy. Meanwhile, Europe watched all of this with suspicion. To Europeans, paper money sounded insane. Metal felt honest. Paper felt like a trick. For centuries, European economies stuck to gold and silver coins, but trade kept growing, and the same old problems returned: weight, security, transport. Eventually, European banks began doing what Chinese merchants had done centuries earlier. They stored gold in vaults and issued paper notes as receipts. These notes could be exchanged for gold on demand. Most people never asked for the gold. The paper was easier. By the 17th century, places like Sweden, 1660s, officially issued paper money, followed by England, France, and others. At first, paper money was still tied to gold or silver. This system became known as the gold standard. But over time, governments noticed something important. People weren't trusting the gold. They were trusting the government. So slowly, paper money stopped being a promise of metal and became something else entirely. It became fiat money. Translation: it's worth something because we say so. This is the system we still use today. At this point, money had completed its transformation, from animals to metal to paper to pure belief, which sounds ridiculous, and yet somehow it works. So here we are. And that's the strange truth about money. It was about trust. At some point, humanity realized that believing together was more powerful than carrying things. That shared belief could move food, labor, armies, and entire civilizations. Money works not because it's real, but because we agree to treat it as if it is. A piece of paper only feeds you because everyone else agrees it can. Numbers on a screen only matter because millions of people wake up every day and pretend they do. And as long as that agreement holds, the system survives. And now, that same role, which has changed so much, is beginning to be replaced by cards, apps, and numbers moving at the speed of light. No weight, no ink, no paper. Just trust. Again. The form changes, but the rule stays the same. Money only works as long as people believe in it. And the next chapter of this story isn't written on paper anymore. It's written in code.